Well, good morning. Good morning. It's Wednesday, and I'm about 15 minutes early, so I'm going to go ahead and guess the majority of you are going to hashtag replay. Go ahead in the comments. So I want to reminisce a little bit with you today. You probably hear a few stories. But in the reminiscing, I want your prayer to become, God, help me see people how you want me to see them, and help those who need to see me a certain way, see me in that way. What do I mean by that? So yesterday we had 4 Washington State pastors here in Georgia. So lead pastors Chuck and Nancy Tilton, and then associate pastors or executive pastors here on the East Coast, West Coast, they say associate, Pastor Sam and Sharnessa Sandin. And it was almost like Holy Spirit just like smacked me over the head. And I am not going to get emotional today, Amber. That is a command right now. Okay. So as I was just like, and so enjoyed the afternoon. But Chuck Tilton, Pastor Chuck Tilton, has been my pastor more or less for almost 3 decades. So he started as my youth pastor, and then I went off to college and he became the head pastor or the lead pastor. And then when I came back from college, let me just pause. So I truly believe that he is the first, one of, if not the very first person who saw me for who God created me to be. So in high school, as my youth pastor, and I would love to like ask him, interview him, whatever, but he just saw me for who God created me to be. He probably saw a very loud, right? Very outspoken, very friendly, very much inviting. Like he always saw me bringing people to the youth group. He always knew that if Amber was going to be there, it was going to be, more people in the place. And let me tell you something. This is where I wanted to get to. I went to college. He was the very first person who ever gave me a platform, to my knowledge. He had me speak on his stage when I was barely 20. Which is where Nordstrom saw me and decided that was going to be his wife and prayed for me for the next 2 years before we ever spoke. That's a different story for a different day. Once I got through college, once I lived in Venezuela, I came back to Washington State, and I remember he invited me to lunch. And he looked at me. Friends, you have to hear this. Like, this blows my mind even just saying it. He looked at me as a 23-year-old single female and said, I actually want to talk to you about launching a citywide college ministry. Like, this is either, and I say this with all respect, this is either semi-foolish or Holy Spirit, okay? And I remember just being like, what am I am like a single, very young female. There is no prospects of any man in my life who can pour into men, and you want me to lead a citywide college ministry. Me. And like, friends, at 23 years of age, Holy Spirit showed him something that literally just, I always say the favorite characteristic of God in my life is the dot connector. Like, I can look back at what he did and how he put ministry. And I would have never told you that I was called to ministry. Wasn't on my radar. I was just living life. And when Jesus turned my world upside down in college, I became radically sold out for him. Which is probably why college students are always on the forefront of mine and my husband's hearts. Because God turned my life upside down in college. And I just started living radically for him. It wasn't about the fact that I heard a massive ministry call. It wasn't the fact that I heard him say, preacher. Nothing like that. Although that is my husband's, which is interesting. But here, a lead pastor sat me down who knew me, who had probably seen many seasons from knowing me at the age of 13 through now sitting down at 23. So a decade of history. And he approaches me and says, I want you to launch and lead a citywide college ministry for those who are 18 to 25, which ended up turning regional, which ended up turning 18 to 30. And I had the privilege of doing it alongside Nordstrom, another story for another day, how he got wrapped into the mix, for 12 years. And I'm just like, Chuck Tilton. Not getting emotional. He'll never see this. He'll never hear this. He's not on Facebook. He probably has the least interest in social media. But he saw me for who God had wired me to be. He knew that, and he also, by the way, was the one who I had an undergrad degree in teaching. So certified teacher, K through 8th, reading specialist, math emphasis, like that was my trajectory, right? Teaching. And he said, I want you to go get your master's. And so he put me through my master's program, and I got a double master's in women's ministries and biblical theology. A double master's. I'm telling you, Pastor Chuck Tilton saw little old me for who God created me, who Jesus saw me as, who Holy Spirit wired me for. He saw me as teacher. He saw me as leader. He saw me as builder because he gave me something completely, nothing. We launched it from the ground up, and he gave me complete freedom. Now, that doesn't mean he didn't support me. That doesn't mean he didn't lead me. Doesn't mean he didn't guide me. He gave me complete freedom to go and do and be and build a 23-year-old. Like, I think I'm so moved this morning because I'm grateful. I'm grateful that Chuck hears Holy Spirit and yielded to Holy Spirit. Like, I can only imagine him and I sitting in that booth, and he thought, Holy Spirit, are you sure? Like, she's real young. She's real young. And you want me to give this to her. You want me to, for more or less, he kind of had to talk me into it because I wasn't biting. I was not biting, but he was like, no, I really feel like this is the Lord. And there was no pressure. If you know Chuck Tilton, there's no pressure. Like, he's humble as all get out. He has things to say, but doesn't have to say them. So anyways, I share all of that. I reminisce with all of that. First of all, it's fresh in my mind because I got to see him yesterday, spend time with him yesterday. He's such a treasure. But may our prayer be this. 1, God, will you allow for me to see others how you created them and how you wired them? Help me to see people through your eyes, right? And then 2, not everybody needs to understand you, okay? But there are key people who need to see you for who you are so that they can call you up in the kingdom. And may you be seen by those. Again, it doesn't have to be the masses. It just might have to be one Chuck Tilton. It just might have to be just one. I mean, I even think about where I am currently. Had Pastor Todd and Pastor Karen not seen me flowing in my gifts, walking out in who I am and what I was called to do. Again, didn't hear anything from heaven. Not telling you I heard from heaven. I'm telling you I was just walking out my radical love for Jesus, my enthusiasm for growing the kingdom. Okay? Go ahead and just live your daily life. Live your daily life. Watch him use you. And had Pastor Todd and Pastor Karen not seen me walking out in my gifts, my strengths, my talents, they wouldn't have sought me out and wanted me to do what I'm doing currently. Friends, wow. I think I'm just going to go sit in the presence. Just soak him up this morning because he's just so good. And you really can't even dream the life he has for you. It's so much bigger and so much better than you could ever even fathom. He's just so good.